Alright, we are in section 2.4, deductive reasoning. Let's look at to solve it. You want to use the coupon to buy 3 different pairs of jeans. You have narrowed your choices to 4 pairs. The costs of the different pairs are $24.99, $39.99, $40.99, and $50. If you spent as little as possible, what is the average amount per pair of jeans that you will pay? Explain. Alright, so you see you buy 2 pairs of jeans, get a third free. So you got to play around with the cost to see what's the average amount per pair that you'll the average amount per pair of jeans that you will pay. Alright, so now this section is very important when we go into more geometric concepts. So it might seem a little odd to you now, but this is definitely a very good section. Alright, so deductive reasoning. Alright, so the law of detachment. That tells you if the hypothesis of the conditional statement is true, then the conclusion is true. So if the first part of your statement is true, then you can assume that the whole entire statement is true. So let's look at problem 1. Oops. Of course you can't see problem 1. Okay. What can you conclude from the given true statements? If a student gets an A on a final exam, then the student will pass the course. So that's the statement. So what can we conclude from Felicia got an A on her history final exam? Well, if it states that a student gets an A, then he or she will pass. She got an A, so she will pass the course. So you conclude she will pass her history course. B. If array, so now we're actually going to connect this to math. If array divides an angle into 2 congruent angles, then the ray is an angle bisector. So that means that ray RS divides angle ARB so that ARS is congruent to SRB. That would be helpful. We had a... Oh, okay. So that means that suppose that this is angle ARB. RS divides ARB so that ARS is congruent to SRB. These arcs right here, since it's 1 and 1, this denotes that it is congruent. So, therefore, if this divides it in half, we can assume that RS is an angle bisector. So, because that is a ray that divides the angle into 2 congruent pieces, RS is an angle bisector. Alright. If 2 angles are adjacent, then they share a common vertex. Alright, so suppose this is angle 1 and this is angle 2. They share a common vertex. Therefore, these 2 are adjacent to each other. These 2 share a common vertex, I'm sorry. They're adjacent, so they share a common vertex. So why don't you try to got it? Alright, so problem 2. What can you conclude from the given information? If a figure is a square, then the figure is a rectangle. If a figure is a rectangle, then the figure has 4 sides. So, if a figure is a square, this is a rectangle. If the figure is a rectangle, it has 4 sides. So therefore, we can conclude that if a figure is a square, then the figure has 4 sides. Therefore, it's kind of repeating itself, so you can already conclude. So, letter B. If you do gymnastics, then you are flexible. If you do ballet, then you are flexible. So this is phrased a little bit differently. So, they're concluding, they have the same conclusion. So, that means that neither conclusion is the hypothesis of the other statement. So we can't do what we did to letter A. We can't combine these 2 statements because these 2 are totally different. As in, the P, the hypotheses, they don't connect with each other. So why don't you try to got it? Alright, finally, problem 3. What can you conclude from the given information? If you live in Accra, then you live in Ghana. If you live in Ghana, then you live in Africa. Alyssa lives in Accra. So, if she lives in Africa, if she lives in Accra, then she lives in Ghana. However, if she lives in Ghana, she also lives in Africa. So we can conclude that, no, not Alyssa. Asa lives in Accra. Lives in Africa. I'm getting my names confused. Since Asa lives in Accra, she also lives in Africa. So on you tried to got it. And if you have any questions tomorrow, please ask them in class.